Hi everyone, and welcome to the fourth episode of this tarot course offered to you by 1millionnights.com. Now in the previous episode, in the third one, we took a look at the meaning and interpretation of the High Priestess card, where as the Fool, now the Magician, on his journey towards mastery, knowledge, to achieve perfection in the mastery over the four elements, has met the High Priestess, who revealed to him the importance of self-knowledge, of having to discover your inner world, your unconscious mind, your own psychology, your unconscious patterns that are running in the background of your mind, because ultimately that is what creates our reality, and this is basically the symbolism of the High Priestess, and that is why she is associated with secrets. And one of the most important truths that the magician learned from the High Priestess brings him to the Empress. And naturally, the Empress is today's subject. We are taking a look at the symbolism, the philosophy, and possible combinations of the Empress card. Now, first of all, why is the magician, the former fool of course, guided towards meeting and coming across the Empress? Well, it is very simple, because one of the most important truths, secrets so to speak, that the High Priestess revealed to the magician was that self-knowledge and everything that we discover deep inside of us also has to be embodied, because here on earth, here in the density of matter, here where basically the pattern, the course of the heavens, the divine schematics appears in a manifested, palpable form, here possessing secret knowledge, information, know-how, mastery is simply not enough. It isn't enough to take the shape and form of a thought, of a mental process, of information that is stored within our brains, even if it's our unconscious mind. Here on earth, all of that knowledge, all of that know-how, all of the information, the principles, the virtues, everything that we love has to be manifested. And when it is manifested, and the manifestation naturally is aligned with love, it is aligned with the rules and regulations, the laws of physics, for example, that govern this world, that creates a harmony, and that harmony between, the inner world and the outer world, when the inner world basically is reflected by the outer world, so the love deep within us, our highest principles, who it is that we are at the very core of our souls. Now all of these, if they are reflected in external reality, well, that naturally represents happiness, the joy of being alive. And when a living, breathing being is actually overjoyed by the simple fact that they are alive, that they have a chance to experience all the wonders, all the magic, all the beauty, all the pleasures, all the joys, the opportunities of earthly life, well, that is already a frequency of prosperity, of harmony. The symbolism of the Empress, who loves life, who loves existence with all her being. And this love energy, the frequency of happiness, of joy, being more than okay with your earthly existence, with your identity, who you are, how your life is, all your decisions, that is a source of earthly power. That is a source of great inner strength. Because when your soul and your mind and every single layer and component of your being is aligned, you have a purpose here, you feel comfortable here, you feel that you have the power to overcome anything, and naturally through invested time, effort, sacrifices, you preserve your earthly power, you preserve your earthly well-being, your happiness, all the joys that life gives you, well then you are already embodying the frequency of the Empress. And when one embodies the frequency of the Empress, well, they are blessed with creativity, their inner divine spark, the very core of the higher self, so to speak, becomes almost like a divine well of creational energy, which can manifest in our lives in so very many different ways. For example, some people become like very talented and very proficient in arts and crafts, where they can create tools, objects, they can tap into their ingenuity and combine intellectual strength with physical strength, as in dexterity. Or for other people, it can represent artistic talents, where they project beauty onto anything they touch, or they are simply a source of psychological beautification in the world. But of course, one of the most common symbolism associated with the Empress is when we create, through flesh, through our earthly beings, as in reproduce, have children. This is the energy of fertility. This is the energy that when we love someone, when we love something, for example, well, the power of that love creates something totally new. For example, when two people fall in love with each other and they commit to each other, well, chances are that a baby is going to be born out of their relationship, out of their love. So all of this belongs to the symbolism of the Empress. Now, of course, from an astrological correspondent, the Empress is the symbolism of Venus, the goddess of love, the goddess of beauty, she who bestows the attraction necessary for the cycles of life to, repeat and succeed each other. She who preserves the continuity of life. So the Empress is not just an earthly power, an earthly representation of our inner worlds, but at the same time, she is also a very potent psychological energy, the energy of love, attraction, creativity, prosperity. So that is exactly why she's associated with earthly pleasure. But when I say earthly pleasure, the Empress is not a hedonistic card. So the Empress knows measure. The Empress is infinitely wise. She also possesses the female wisdom, intuition, all the right instincts, because she is a mother. She is a creator. So everything that she does, she preserves life, she nurtures life, she protects life. So that is why the Empress is not a very hedonistic card. It doesn't really represent an excess of pleasure, for example, escapism or the excess of substances, which do actually offer us a lot of pleasure, a lot of satisfaction. It does release that happiness hormone, but that is more like an illusionary, purely psychological pleasure. So the Empress card is not a valid symbolism for all of that. But when these pleasures source from being aligned with what you truly love on a heart level, may it be a person, for example, a romantic relationship, may it be doing an activity which really, really satisfies you, nurturing life, for example, children, a pet, taking care of other people, sharing your prosperity, creating basically happiness in your own life and in the life of others, because you don't just receive this earthly power, you also have to use it, work with it, express it, make it basically contagious. That is the energy and the symbolism of the Empress. Now, of course, in astrology, Venus has two homes, so she takes on two different forms with two different ruling principles. So her daytime expression, her home sign is Libra, where she takes on the form of the celestial Aphrodite. Now, what does this mean? It means that she is much more in tune with the highest principles, the philosophy, the intellectual essence of what love and beauty is. So when she is in the sign of Libra, for example, she represents platonic love, she represents diplomacy, she represents friendships, alliances, equality, the beauty of interhuman connections, the beauty of interhuman partnerships, the beauty of collaboration, the beauty, the magic of having associates, of having friends, partners, people who you deeply resonate with, even on a principle, on a philosophical level. And at the same time, when beauty is in your mind, when beauty is in your intellect, where everything that you are gonna behold, that you're gonna gaze at, that you're gonna look at, is gonna be dressed in that notion, philosophy, and energy of your inner beauty. Like, let me just give you an example. You're walking on the street and you see almost like a half-dead tree, where you can see clearly that it doesn't have too much time left on this earth, which is a very not so pleasant, not so beautiful, rather doomy and gloomy image that you behold. But when you tap into your inner Venus, well, immediately you can associate a poem or a feeling or anything, for example, like a gothic picture, a gothic scenery, and when you project it onto that tree, well, immediately you dress it up in a certain kind of psychological beauty. It doesn't change the physical representation of the tree, but how you perceive it and how you're gonna basically tell this episode of your day, share it with other people, well, that makes it that much more beautiful. Because if you have said you saw a half-dead tree, that wouldn't mean that much to anyone. But when you dress it up with beautiful words, when you associate it with other kind of feelings and philosophies, well, then you already infuse this beauty in the minds of other people as well. But the reason that I started with Venus's daytime home of Libra is because the Empress card very rarely represents just the highest philosophies, just, the principle of beauty and love and prosperity and fertility. While even though it is perfectly valid and true that if we are very prosperous on the inside, for example, we have so many reasons to love life, to love this, to love that. We have so many things in this existence that we find attractive, beautiful, meaningful, etc. Well, that is already a great power that we possess. So we cannot ignore the celestial Aphrodite at all, but the Empress card very rarely symbolizes just the philosophy of all of this. Her most common symbolism is actually Venus in her home sign of Taurus, where she is the earthly Aphrodite, where everything that I spoke about, Venus in her sign of Libra, here it has to be manifested, it has to be palpable, it has to be earthly. And this is also something that the magician has learned from the high priestess, because as I said earlier, holding the truth, knowing how stuff works, knowing the highest principles that govern the world is one thing, but consolidating those, embodying those, living those practically is what makes the Empress the Empress. Like, let me give you an example. Taking the energy of the High Priestess card, an inner secret or an unconscious thought, so to speak, it can be, for example, a wonderful business idea, something really, really ingenious that your unconscious mind thought of, and that entering into your awareness is already a massive realization, but that doesn't really mean anything unless you either find partners or go out on your own and try to do something physical, enact that idea, and when you enacted it, well, that is when it becomes the domain, in the kingdom, so to speak, of the Empress. Because when that idea of yours was exteriorized, acted upon, well, it already became a creation. It already took the form, so to speak, of a child, because you created it, you released it from the inside, so you gave it life, you gave it power, and of course you gave it every single chance to be independent. Of course, this is highly controversial, but anything that you create is an energy, and when that energy exits your inner world, well, it can basically sustain itself. There are so many examples when big ideas, big ingenious epiphanies were started, acted upon, even though when those inventors, those people who dreamed it up, who thought it out, didn't really have the power to complete it or to make something very serious out of it. But the simple gesture that they tried, and they shared their ideas with other people maybe, and they inspired someone with greater earthly power, well, many ideas of these type came into reality, and basically they just had a life of their own, and they started developing themselves almost as if by magic. And that is exactly the magnetism of the Empress. When you have a desire, when you have a great ingenious idea, when maybe you have just a need, a very strong and urgent need, and when you exteriorize that one way or another, well, you already give it the chance to grow and, energetically speaking, have a life of its own. It already falls into the symbolism of the Empress and the astrological rulership of Venus, because it was born from your heart, from your emotional world. It is something that you would love to experience. May it be an idea, may it be a need, may it be even a dream or a fantasy, as long as it's possible physically. Now, of course, the strongest energies are very passionate and sensual desires that basically just awaken our heart spaces unto life. The heart itself has a very powerful magnetism, and even physically this is perfectly valid, because it was proven scientifically that the heart possesses an electromagnetic field of its own, which is that much stronger than the brains. So basically, the heart and the heart space, regardless if you just look at it from a spiritual perspective, psychological perspective, or even physical perspective, it does have a power of attraction, and it can influence reality, especially when whatever we desire is so much alive and burns with passion inside of us. That can influence basically even the course of fate, and that is the true power of the Empress, because that feeling, that desire, that sensual, passionate energy, when we release it from the inside, well, it already becomes like a energetic embryo, which can grow and grow and grow and have a life of its own, and it can create itself. It can basically turn its own frequency into a very earthly frequency, and that means that it can manifest here on earth regardless of what it is. So now that we know the symbolism of the Empress, now that we know that she is basically an earthly manifested embodied Venus, we can understand why the following meanings are closely associated with this card. Also, she bears the number 3, which in numerology is the symbolism of the divine feminine, of creational energy, to spawn another, so it's 3. And that third one evolves and grows and, starts a journey of its own. So basically, one of the biggest symbolism associated with the Empress is fertility. It doesn't really matter what kind of fertility it is, Of course, it can be physical fertility, especially for females. It can mean motherhood, it can mean pregnancy, it can simply mean that you're ready, you're fertile, your inner clock is ticking, and your maternal instincts are awakening. But it can also represent intellectual fertility, when your mind is full of just good ideas, when your mind just cannot stop creating and creating, combining elements, sending very constructive, creating, problem-solving thoughts to your awareness, to your consciousness. It can also represent a totally different kind of fertility, when your job, when your career, when your livelihood is very busy and you're producing, income, resources at the cost of your time and effort, of course. But it usually symbolizes prosperity, where work is available, business is available, there are opportunities out there. Of course, many times the Empress is also associated with harvest, because let's not forget that she is the symbol of a mother, and a mother always has to work, a mother has to sacrifice, a mother has to nurture, and many times that nurture means that giving away her life force to her children or anyone of her choosing, and by doing that, she makes that person, the child, etc., grow, bloom, blossom, and of course, naturally, she gets everything back because she worked and sacrificed so very hard for it. And the most important element here is love. She did everything with the greatest and most pure love. So naturally, may it be good karma, or may it be simply the energy of love returning into her life, she gets it back. And that's why she becomes an empress. Because everyone loves her, everyone respects her, everyone sees her as a source, a spring of love, beauty, and nurturing energies. Now, in many tarot decks, the Empress suffered a name change, so to speak. So in some decks, she appears as a mother or anything, any word related to motherhood. While in others, especially oracle decks, she bears the name of the gardener, etc. Because, all of these symbols are very resonant to what she basically symbolizes and embodies. Now, speaking about Venus, one of her most common interpretations is naturally love. But this is the kind of love which is embodied, which is real, which isn't platonic, which isn't just a fantasy in our minds. Neither is it just chit-chat, but this is the kind of love where there is commitment, where there is passion, where there is a physical element. For example, like the genuine desire to have a family with that person, to move into a house, or to share resources, to share happiness, to share feelings, to make the lives of the other person that much more beautiful, happy, fulfilled, etc. So naturally, because of the symbolism of Venus, the Empress is all about love, romance, partnerships, relationship, commitment, long-term relationship. Many times she simply appears as a warning sign that Venus is ready to bless your life with love, with connection, with sensuality, with attraction in the very close future. Now, of course, the Empress card is also linked to other female deities who have much to do with the earth or love or fertility or prosperity. So, some people consider the Empress as Ishtar, other people consider the Empress as Isis, Gaia, Ceres, Demetra, the Earth Mother, or simply the Queen, the Spirit of Nature. And of course, this makes a lot of sense, because, what is prosperity? What is physical well-being? Well, it is when you have enough to eat, when you have earthly power, when you have good health, when you have vitality, when you are fertile, when you are attractive physically. So yes, absolutely, the Empress can represent the goddess energy, and especially if you're kind of doing like a spirit guide reading with spiritual forces guiding you, messaging you, influencing your life, and you get the Empress, well, it can be Venus or any kind of female deity which is responsible with nature or agriculture or, love, or simply said, the divine feminine. And also in many depictions, graphical depictions of the Empress card, the Empress has a crown made out of stars, which speaks for itself, as above, so below. So the Empress was also chosen to be the Empress by the heavens, by cosmic forces. She is a beloved of the universe because of her beauty, of her inner beauty, because she knows the principle of beauty. She knows how to sacrifice. She learned all the hard lessons about love, but also self-worth, that she needs to take care of herself. She needs to many times put herself on the first place, because if she's a source of fertility and life, well, she has to protect herself in order to protect life. When you live a life of sacrifice, sacrificing for your family, for your children, for your lover, for society, for charity, etc., you can only sacrifice if you have sufficient to give. And that is why the Empress is also associated with a really strong and healthy sense of self-worth. Self-esteem, so to speak. All your values, all your virtues, everything that make you attractive, everything that make you worthy. And it doesn't take a lot. One of the most powerful philosophies is that for the simple fact that you were born, that you embody life, that you are here in this earth school, that is more than enough to make you worthy to get the best of life, to get the very best that life, existence, earth has to offer. But I repeat, this isn't in a very hedonistic way, but rather, everyone, especially the High Priestess, the card preceding the Empress, well, she is dual. She knows that happiness, pain, and suffering go hand in hand, because earthly life is not just one side of the spectrum or the other. It is mixed. All of these have to basically live in a certain balance. If we look at the Empress card as the Earth Mother, as the spirit of nature, well, nature is full of joy. It is full of pleasure, blessings, prosperity, where life can thrive, where life can just simply exist freely. But all of this has to be in balance, because excessive happiness, when life thrives in a very unchallenged way, well, it can become very destructive, and it is toxic to the Earth Mother, as we can see in so many instances in our modern society. So that is why the spirit of nature equally governs the forces of death, destruction, like the predators eating the prey, the trophic chain, the destructive elements of nature, the tsunamis, the calamities, all of that, the forest fires, for example. So life and death are in like a permanent dance of equilibrium. So this Venus, our values, our sense of self-worth has to be healthy. So it cannot really go in either side of the spectrum, exactly because the Empress bears the symbolism, the numerological symbolism of 3. So she is in the middle. She finds balance in the middle path between the two polarities. So the Empress knows that life is full of suffering, of pain. It is full of doom and gloom. That is why she chooses to embody beauty to counterbalance all the doom and gloom and the negativity of life, the pain, the suffering, the misfortune, because she knows that fate has to have her own course and no one can control it. When there is pain, death, and destruction in the patterns of fate, well, nothing can avoid it, but we can heal it, we can make it seem and be perceived much more beautiful, much more, ennobling. We can attune it to higher principles, and that makes a lot of difference. But at the same time, life cannot be full of joy, happiness, aimless freedom, just to live for the sake of living. Because if we don't want to do anything with our earthly power and our earthly representation other than just enjoy infinitely, well, we don't really need to be a human being, do we? We can basically be a tree or a plant or anything. We are given this power to create for a very important reason, as in to either nurture, propagate, create life and protect it. How and through which means depends on us personally. We can simply use whatever we love the most, because whatever we genuinely, on a heart level, we love the most is part of our destinies and our souls. That's why that love inside of us is so pure and so very strong. So, the Empress can also represent why we basically came here on earth, why we are incarnated here, why we are embodied, and what is our greatest life mission. Because instead of, trying to figure it out logically, etc., the Empress tells us, simply look inside your heart. Of course, a heart free of illusions, free of the influence of other people. Just be totally honest with yourself. What is it that you love and desire the most in this earthly existence? And that, when you find out the answer, that is what you came here to do. That is your mission. That is part of your soul's journey. And for example, in certain kind of spreads, when the Empress is combined with the High Priestess, for example, or with a very philosophical card, for example, the Six of Swords, the Two of Swords, when you have to behold the truth, well, it can be simply a message to go within, find out what you love the most, and there you have all your answers. The answers lie in what you love. Now, the High Priestess reversed isn't that much different from the High Priestess in upright position, but maybe reversed, it can tell you that maybe you have a certain imbalance in your life, and first of all, you need to find out the right measure, what balance means, what equilibrium means for you. Because either it can mean that you're sacrificing too much, you're being in tune with pain and the dark side of life in an excessive way. So that is already creating the energy of suffering, depression inside of you. And in order to prevent this, just focus on your pleasures, on what you love, etc. So in reverse position, it can tell you to start focusing or letting into your heart and into your life much more sources of pleasure and everything that you love, regardless what that is, so do not feel guilty. Or sometimes, for example, the High Priestess reverse combined with the Eight of Wands, or another Sagittarius card, so to speak, the Temperance, for example, or the Eight of Swords, the Hangman, might tell you that you do know what you love in life and what would make you happy and make your life much better, but you might be feeling guilty. Your inner psychological forces might be misaligned. There might be a misaligned belief that is blocking you from making your life as pleasurable and prosperous as it could be. But of course, there are some very positive and basically clear as daylight combinations that the High Priestess can represent. For example, the High Priestess with the Lovers, the High Priestess with the Two of Cups, can simply mean that a love is waiting for you. Prepare yourself for romance. Prepare yourself for partnership. Of course, there is no guarantee that it's going to be a perfect match, but that the romantic gestures will enter your life and you will stir up someone's interest. That part is almost guaranteed. Or, for example, the Empress combined with the Devil card, or the Empress combined with the Three of Cups reversed, for example. The Empress combined with the Ace of Wands or Two of Wands or a very strong fire energy card can represent, down to earth matters, as in someone might be sexually or physically interested in you. The Empress combined, for example, with a prosperity card like the 10 of coins, 6 of coins, 4 of coins, Ace of coins. The Devil reversed, for example, can represent financial opportunities, prosperity, good fortune. For example, Empress and the Wheel of Fortune may represent a unexpected gain. The Empress with the Death card and another coin card, for example, may represent an inheritance. The Empress and Justice and another coin card may represent that an injustice from the past may be turned around in the close future. But of course, the Empress combined with negative coin cards, for example, 7 of coins reversed, 5 of coins, or a psychological card like the Moon reversed, or 9 of Swords, let's say, or 5 of Swords. It can represent illness, it can mean bad physical health. Empress with the Tower, for example, and another rather negative card may mean a risk of accidents. The Empress with the Fool, let's say, can mean, for example, pregnancy or childbirth, for great fertility. Or it can also be a sign, be careful what you do, because there might be new life coming from those activities, regardless of what you think or how your foresight is telling you. Or there are so very many fortunate and positive combinations with the Empress card. For example, Empress and the Emperor can represent, if you're single and looking either a really favorable new relationship or a fantastic moment of self-worth, of leadership, of climbing up the hierarchical ladder. For example, Empress and the 7 of Swords. You are so beautiful, magnetic, you have such a strong Venusian aura or something about you that other people might just want to do what you desire to make you happy. Empress and the 5 of Swords. Well, that can also mean that you can achieve what you desire for the simple fact that you're physically attractive or you have a lot of experience, with persuasion, regardless of what that actually means. Empress with the Wheel of Fortune, and let's say maybe the World card pops there as well. Well, that is something really, really positive. Like a miracle, like a big moment of good fortune, like an unexpected twist and turn of fate, all for the better. But of course, very many times, the Empress does suggest a very relevant female figure, like a female leader, like a mother figure, like a very strong and potent female. If it's a man, it can represent his wife, his partner, his mother, for example. Now, sometimes it also means daughter, but usually it is the Princess of Coins or a Strength card or another tarot card which bears the female symbolism, but it denotes youth and, inexperience, innocence, etc. And last but not least, the Empress can also represent like a Taurus lady, a Libra lady, or someone who in real life kind of embodies the symbolism of that Venus. May that be fertility, may that be creativity, may that be a parental figure, especially mother. May it be someone who makes our lives more beautiful, more prosperous, more worth living, so to speak. So very many times the Empress does represent a person, a relevant female figure in our lives or in the lives of the person who we are reading for, or it depends on the circumstances. So this concludes the 4th episode of our Tarot Course series. I do hope that you enjoyed it and you found it useful. Next week, naturally, we're going to move on to the Emperor, the tarot card bearing the number 4. If you'd like a personal reading, just log on to our website 1millionnights.com and find your dedicated advisor. And also in the month of September, we have a special promotion where if you buy any of our prepaid packages, you get 10% bonus credit for free. Thank you so much for listening. Wish everyone a safe and blessed day. Until next time, bye for now.